Yeah, so the SEQUAL project, which is our acronym for the project full title is Social Ecological Relations and Gender Equality, the Dynamics and Processes for Transformational Change across scales. What we are investigating is really um, the gender differences in the participation and management of natural resources, and also the leadership, um, the gender differences in leadership in natural resource sectors, and also in climate change processes and policies. So that's the kind of main goal.
Mhm.
And as you know, this is a multi-country collaboration, and we wanted to look at how these gender differences are similar, or um, how they play out in the different policy processes in the different countries, and to
Mhm.
draw out lessons for where we might um, provide some insight for what it takes to change towards a more gender equality. Yeah, well, obviously, I guess the most uh, simple way of looking at it is through gender in terms of sex, so by um, male and female. But we also look at gender more deeply in terms of the relationships, so the relations between the different sexes within the sex. So, and also some of the more gendered power relations that exist in society. Um, we also look at gender as a starting point to kind of consider other type of intersectional um, differences. So in our case studies, in our policies, we also look at how different ethnicities
Mhm.
are also kind of part uh, of the whole inequality complex. So we look at ethnicities, we look at also the rural urban divide, we look at residents versus migrants. So we kind of take a little bit broader intersectional lens to the gender question. And this is kind of how we've kind of worked through this. So it's a very much a feminist approach to studying these issues. We try to look at this issue very much in an interconnected way. So there's a top-down side to it as well as a bottom-up side to it. And from the top-down side to it is very much looking at the discourses that are in climate change and natural resource policies. So we're kind of taking different approaches to examine the different discourses and some of the politics underlying
Mhm.
issues of gender in policies. And in terms of these types of data collection, it means creating sort of a data corpus out of policy documents mainly, but also we take media documents or media events, so kind of like protest events or newspaper. And in our partners in Norway, they're also looking at social media as one source of information. And then we
Okay.
do also a lot of interviews with actors in this field. So policy actors, civil society groups, activist groups, academia, also private sector. So in the Swedish case, we really are looking into the forestry sector. So we do interview the private sector companies, the big forestry companies. So together we have this data corpus to kind of then examine the policy discourses and the narratives around gender
Mhm.
that are playing out. And we apply a feminist approach to examine it. Um, Carol Barchi came out probably in the late 1990s with what is called the WPR approach. So asking what the problem is represented to be, at looking through how the problems, quote unquote, of gender is represented in these narratives, and then seeing what type of solutions or what type of actions are being proposed. So that's the kind of research activity that we're doing on the more top front. So we're all doing these policy discourses for Norway, Sweden, and Spain. So the bottom-up approach is really kind of collecting field data to understand how some of these policy discourses are, kind of connect to what's going on the ground. And it's a very diverse set of case studies that we have. In Norway, we're looking at reindeer herding by indigenous peoples in the Nordic region, the Arctic region, and reindeer herding is not just a issue of an indigenous livelihood activity, but it also has complications or implications of climate change with how the climate is changing and snow is melting quicker and so on. And it also relates a lot to issues of energy and energy production in Norway. So it's tied very much in resource management and climate change issues. In Spain, we're looking at communal pastures and women shepherds in the Pyrenees Mountains. So there are also elements of climate change and elements of the commercialization of food production in terms of livestock herding. So there is also quite a lot of tensions there. And in the Swedish case, we took a slightly different approach because Sweden is so far ahead with its feminist government and its feminist foreign policies, and they've set out also very strong feminist ideals in how development aid is being done. So we wanted to examine how the northern ideals of gender inequality or gender equality translate through development to the case in Burkina Faso. So how is development unfolding in Burkina Faso with the northern ideals of gender equality and development cooperation? So we're collecting field data from these three cases, and these are a very kind of a rich portfolio of mixed methods where we collect life stories, we have focus group discussions. There's also a lot of interviews and surveys and really segregated also discussions with the men, women, the elders, the youth to get different perspectives into these issues. So through the local aspect and the policy aspect, we wanted to see how these different narratives interplay onto real everyday practices on the ground. We've kind of discussed this quite a lot within the team, and we do it the ability to compare and to analyze the differences is by two ways. One is by having, for example, some similar methodologies in the way we do our policy narrative. We're all applying the WPR approach, the structured method. And then, for example, in the field study, some of the methods are similar, but different contexts demand different type of data collection. But what we have is very strong research questions that are very similar across the three sites. Kind of harmonized some of these in anticipation of some of the analytical aspects later. And what we want to do is not just to kind of highlight differences, that's rather easy, is try to find where are the openings for change. Yes, we actually have a really fantastic team. We have well, first from the Norway side, there's a group of researchers from the Nordland Research Institute. They're based up in Bodø, which is slightly, I think it's slightly above the Arctic Circle. And they
Wow,
have
okay.
been carrying out research on reindeer herding and the natural resource policies and tensions around um, this kind of livelihood strategy for quite some years. And now, what they are in this collaboration, what they are adding to their analyses is this more policy, political look at gender inequality, and also in their cases with the ethnic
Mm-hmm.
Sami people doing this activity is also a bit of ethnic inequalities as well. So they are using the policy analyses to kind of pull out some of these narratives to um, to bring to the policy discussions. So, and then with our Spain team, they're from University of Vic um, in Catalonia, and they are an incredible team with very strong feminist research skills. And we have actually, some of us in Sweden we have worked with them, or we have had discussions with them on some of these issues actually quite a while before the project. So we have had some collaboration going on. And they are very strong in this field, feminist methods, to how they get life stories, talk about gender differences in resource management on the ground. And, they are also, I think, building up their policy and political analyses through this project. And in Sweden, we are the Stockholm Resilience Center. We have the center is strong in terms of looking at social ecological systems, the interlinkages between people and nature. And some of us in the team have had quite a lot of experiences doing policy analyses and political discourse analyses. So I think, and also we have actually a team in Finland with University of Helsinki who's joined the group, and they have done a lot of work in Burkina Faso and also done a lot of work on development, forestry, policy, and politics. So we all have slightly different skill sets, and I think we're trying to combine our skill sets to kind of to be able to look at this issue across different scales and like bringing different methods to bear. So it's been a very productive and very engaging and always very motivating and inspiring every time we have our short workshops and things like that. So it's been a very good collaboration, I would say. Yes, our plan was, well, we always have had from the start of the project monthly or bi-monthly meetings.
Meetings.
So we would do it through Zoom or Skype,
Mm-hmm.
And so this was just a quick catch up kind of meeting. And our plan was to have at least one annual meeting hosted in the different countries where we would come together for 3 days, 4 days to kind of move our project forward. And then we also had plans where we had panel sessions in different conferences where we would also be at least one more time a year. We would get together and work together on certain issues or certain analytical questions. So, of course, the latter two, the annual meeting and the conferences, did not happen. We did manage a kickoff meeting in 2019 as the project started. So what we've done now is to transfer, to kind of take advantage of tools like Slack and Zoom, and also some of the more interactive skills like Padlet and so on.
Yeah.
Hold our discussions and our to have more interactive meetings. So we've been having little 2-3 hour workshops where it might be to tackle one key question or one key part of our analysis where we present our work to each other, give comments, um, try to understand all the um, difficult nitty-gritty issues and try to kind of see how we can continue to move our project and our analyses more integrated way, because this will be important for our integrative comparative analyses, and so that we don't kind of fall back into our individual country doing individual analyses. So that's what we've been doing over the past year, and this has been, I think, successful, pretty successful. I think most of us come out of these meetings rather rejuvenated, but also frustrated because we managed to touch on a lot, but there are always something that we didn't manage to get to or something like that. So we're still trying to keep this going. Of course, some of our field work has been impacted by this, by the COVID. For example, in all the interviews that we've done in Sweden has been through Zoom. But one thing that we were hoping to do was to have a round table where we present results back and have a discussion of what the results mean with our key stakeholders. And that we're still trying to figure out what might be a good way to do it. We could, of course, present results back, but to have this real interactive feedback is sometimes challenging with external stakeholders. So we're trying to figure these things out. I know Spain has been, their fieldwork has been delayed a bit, and they're trying to figure out also new ways of doing this. So I think right now we are still optimistic that we can catch up with some of this work over this year, and we think it's possible. But you know, the situation is still not that great. That's sort of, you know, been on this upswing that we were hoping. So we'll see how it goes. But I think we will have to try and figure out also alternative ways in how we can both do data collection and also have this interactive aspect of and reporting and having dialogues with our collaborators and our stakeholders that we wish. So we're still kind of
exploring
out, I think, exploring different ways. Yeah. Well, perhaps the consensus we are finding is that these inequalities that we are looking at in natural resource management in policies is actually very deep seated. And this is perhaps not unusual, but trying to get to what are some of the roots and representations and assumptions of these inequalities have kind of brought up different things or different things in the different places where we look at. In Sweden, there is, for example, in the forestry sector, and this is already kind of a little bit well documented, there is a notion of masculinity in the forestry sector that kind of has created or hampered, you would say, gender equality at the different levels in forestry. In Burkina Faso, for example, gender is kind of, from a government point of view, is kind of placed at the as a problem of culture. So it is culture or it is society that is patriarchal, and rather than it being perhaps a political problem or a issue of power, it's just and it's, if you posit it in that way, it's much more difficult to tackle issues of culture than it is to or maybe it's equally difficult to tackle issues of culture and issues of political power. So, trying to kind of get at the roots of these very persistent narratives has been really interesting, and it's kind of, I think, um, gone a bit more than what we were. We can all agree there's gender inequality, but where we thought the problem
Mm.
was at the start of the project, we've been able to kind of go a little bit deeper in the analyses and in our findings. So it's been incredibly interesting and incredibly, I think, uh, I don't know what the right word to say is, whether it's kind of frustrating, but at the same time, it's also incredibly motivating to kind of come up with some new insights to see what we can, how we can tackle these issues. So I think there's a lot that we are still digesting at the moment. We just in on the Swedish side, we just finished all our interviews. We just collected all our data
Yeah.
along with the Burkina side, and we're just kind of heavy in the analytical stage of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we are really looking forward to kind of dig deeper into some of these. But what we have been really, I would say, heartened is how much interest there is in this issue amongst the people we talk with.
Mm-hmm.
So all our interviewees have been incredibly forthcoming, incredibly um, also welcoming the project and the question we are examining,
Mm-hmm.
and has given us really rich insights to work with. So in that sense, I think this is not just an old question. This is still a very pertinent and a very, I think, societally relevant question, even in these times in Sweden, which we kind of I actually come from Malaysia, and I kind of expected you know gender equality in Sweden to be very high, as it is. Um, but there is still so much that we need to continue to fight for and work on.